Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome director Didier Charette, who joins us to talk about their work on the documentary Simple Plan, The Kids in the Crowd. Didier will talk us through constructing the documentary and how he wanted to tell the band's story. Please be warned, there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Didier. Hi Didier, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining
Nice.
us today.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
We're here to sit down about the documentary that you directed, Simple Plan, The Kids in the Crowd, which has just come out recently on Amazon. How have you found the reception to the doc?
Honestly, it's been incredible. It came out 2 weeks ago, and the amount of love and feedback we received was quite phenomenal. I've never experienced anything like that. The honestly, it's to the point where my battery was draining for the two the two first days just from the amount of messages I was receiving and in all all languages, like not just people from Canada or the States. Like I know a lot of people in Brazil really connected with the film. I know in Italy as well, and so yeah, it was very interesting to see the response. First time I released a project that came out internationally like that, and yeah, it felt good after all the hard work we put into it.
Yeah, especially something like Amazon, where pretty much, yeah, as you mentioned, worldwide, and then the fact that it's not like a staggered release. Like if you had something in the cinema, for example, it's all like all one day, obviously different time zones, but that must be still pretty cool. Slash, kind of daunting knowing that so many people, so many people be get to watch it at the same time.
It's wild. Like I would shit my pants if I was sitting in front of all those people all at once, you know. I remember I was in a meeting at one point. I can't remember with who it was, but someone said if the film's not good, not 9 million people will see it. And if it's good, it can be exponential. So I
Isn't
guess
that
we're somewhere in between.
but isn't that crazy to say? Like, yeah, even if it's bad, 9 million people would still watch it.
Yeah.
Like that's a crazy amount of people. Like,
It's crazy. You know, I'm from Quebec and there's not even 9 million people here in the province where I'm from. So yeah, it's a wild one.
and then also, I know we spoke before, you had the screening in your hometown. That must have been quite something as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we did the first screening in Montreal, friends and family and, colleagues. That was fantastic. It was in a proper cinema, but then in my hometown of Hawkesbury, Ontario, we had a showing at the bar I used to work at. And it was all my friends from high school, all my friends growing up in my family, and it was really cool to go back home with this project, and the band made a little video to introduce it, and everyone was really happy. So yeah, that was a great evening as well.
Yeah, I can imagine like the high afterwards, not being able to sleep and just being like, wow, it's probably like a feeling that you've made it in like an odd way, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's crazy because, with the amount of love, as I said, and the amount of just like connection with people all around when the film came out. It's interesting because I receive the love and I take it, but then I'm still going to bed alone at night, and like it kind of created like a real contrast in between this project and my real life.
But I guess with projects as well, like because you're doing a documentary where you're following them on tour, and then probably in your downtime interviewing people, it must be because it's so ever consuming, especially like filmmaking in general is very consuming, especially with shoot days. Even though somebody says you're only filming from 8 till 6, but sometimes people have to be there from, 4 o'clock in the morning till 6 or after, if they're doing stuff
Yeah.
like prosthetics or setting up, and it is ever consuming. So you kind of have to live, breathe, eat it, and then. try be normal on the weekends without thinking about what you're doing next.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's I think that's the goal in life to be able to have a, a full life where you can be really involved with your project, but still have, a personal life that is thriving and where you can be present. Honestly, like it was a big learning curve for me this project because for a year and a half, that's all I did. From morning to when I went to bed, it was all that documentary on Simple Plan, just prepping for interviews and traveling. We traveled so much, like I was always in airplanes and jet lagged and following the band, and so yeah, it took a big chunk of my life for almost 2 years.
And it's funny how you mentioned jet lag, and that's a little simple plan pun.
Yeah.
So maybe we can plant those in during see if we can name any more songs by accident when we're answering.
Oh
Um,
man, there's so many songs that are like exactly connected to the experience they went through, and even me, like most of the songs I connected to them in the process of making this film more than I expected to. Like there's a song called Where I Belong, and pretty much it's like a I don't know, like I guess like a coming of age where you realize that yeah, maybe all the effort and yeah, all the work you put in at some point where well you finally belong, like even though you might have like the imposter syndrome or feel like you're different at one point. Yeah, that song connected with me. Even like I felt I had this like imposter syndrome while I was making the film. Sometimes I was unsure if I was the right person to do it or if I was doing it right or yeah, being like true to their essence, their story. So yeah, I connected to their music in the process a lot.
I think it's an interesting point though, right? About like the imposter syndrome and when you're working with another creative talent, because they probably have felt that as well when they're working on albums and working on music and taking their time, or maybe even a case they might even be rushing something because like somebody at the label might be pushing it. So I guess when you're with those all those musicians and people who are like that, there must be a way that you kind of rub off on one another that you're feel like you shouldn't be there, but you kind of become on a creative autopilot to like capture what you're doing and what's going on. And you see that in the documentary. And I think you kind of explore part of it with an interview with Pierre when he's on the beach and talking about his voice and how he'd have like panic attacks, which it's funny how we kind of like look at the story of Simple Plan, but then you don't actually think about like the individuals of like what goes on with their music because he talks about his vocals and not being classically trained as a singer, and it's like, oh man, like yeah, what happens if his vocals do burst out? Like what happens then for a show? And you also feel guilty in that way that you can't perform in front of people who've come
Yeah.
to see you, but then also it's like that panic of like, oh my gosh, you know, this is like my babies. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really wanted to tap into, go beyond Simple Plan and figure out who these guys are in Simple Plan. That was important for me and yeah, they gave me all access to who they really are as humans and how they evolved as men in Simple Plan, and that's what was the most inspiring to me.
I think as well, like having interviews with the families and their parents who they come off very positively, but it's always that thought of like, what's my kids doing? Like them not necessarily understanding what being in a band is like because you probably think that's not a real job, that's not what's going to get you somewhere. But I think they were very, very supportive, and I think they understood like the hard work that the guys were doing and how they can progress in what they're doing as well.
Yeah, there was a nice interview bit that didn't end up making it in the film, but I was sitting down with Chuck and he said, "Yeah, like my dad could not like get it." And that song Perfect came from that, but he's like, "Yeah, it was just like impossible. There was no other examples. There was only Celine Dion that was like an example from where we're from, in like in French, we're French and that have been able to have like a real international career, honestly, there's Celine Dion and there's them now in terms of, having like a wide international audience.
Yes, and I didn't realize how big Simple Plan are. And because I've seen them twice, I saw them once in London, where they did three shows in one day. I think
Oh, wow.
this is lead up to their 2009 album. So they play each show they played their album in full, which was
Wow.
like incredible to think that like how much you need to mentally prepare for those shows because one show is probably quite hard if you're doing 2 hours, but then you're doing all your albums, and it's also an album where like no one's heard yet, so it's like that's probably really daunting. But
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
and then I saw them at Warped Tour a couple of years later, and it was rammed. I was like, I couldn't believe how many people were here, and the energy, the vibe, the performance, it was just crazy. What's your experience in terms of wanting to capture the audience members who come to the shows and they're even featured? Like, how did you want the audience to be portrayed as well and bring them into the story?
Yeah, so like from the get-go, I knew there was a connection with the fans. I knew they had a solid fan base around the world, but the first tour I did with them was in the UK. So there I saw that connection between the fans and the band. And I know it might sound cliche, like all the bands are gonna say, yeah, we have like dedicated fans, but in this case, it really felt like the fans who were showing up to their concerts were, it's like they were going to church. There was like such a like tangible connection between them. The energy, like it the only way I can, it's like a communion. Like the way the fans, like the real fans, the way I saw them, the way they looked, like they felt was like they felt seen, and they felt really connected to, of course, the lyrics, but also the band, because like the film explores that, but the band were always felt like outcasts within their own community, within their own genre. And I feel like the fans who connected with this band also felt that way. And so the themes of the song really, really tapped into something really personal for everyone. And once I saw that, uh, it got me so emotional, and that I really wanted to explore that and show that in the film, because I thought that was so unique, that connection. It's funny. I was listening to an interview because, as you know, Ozzy Osbourne passed away yesterday, and I was listening to an interview he did with Henry Rollins, and they were talking about exactly the same thing. Like at first, like Black Sabbath were a fans band, and so are Simple Plan, and I think that's why, that's like a testament to the hard work and that connection, and I think that's why a band can live on for a very long time. This Simple Plan are 25 years old now. It's wild.
Yeah, thanks for aging me, man. It makes me feel like I remember when that first album came out. It's like again crazy to think that it's been so long. And
Yeah.
then also, as you said, like even when you see the audience members, it is like it's not just people my age or maybe your age, but it's also people who are younger.
Yeah.
Like how they're sort of transcending different generations and how people are still discovering them and going to see them. And yeah, that's another like a big thing. That's like as a band to survive and thrive, really.
Yeah.
Within the documentary as well, you have a number of other musical artists that you sit down and interview. How do you go about prepping for those interviews, and how do you approach them? Because each each person is their own character, and
Yeah.
I can imagine certain people are need a bit more help to sort of come out their shell, or a little bit more relaxed about it because they've probably done a number of interviews. But how do
Right.
you go about getting the sort of best answers out of people?
Well, first you need to accept the fact that you're shitting your pants. For me, no, but honestly, like I met some of my, my idols from when I was a kid. But the truth is, when we started reaching out to all these people, when you're reaching out for them to talk about people they care about, their friends, people they toured with, it's not the same as if you would ask them to do an interview about their own career. Like it feels fresh for them. So they're happy to be a part of a project like this that celebrates people they care about. So, when we reached out to Mark Hoppus from Blink 182, he was like, "Yeah, of course I want to support these guys. I've been supporting them forever. Like I'm gonna make it work." So, and same as for, Avril Lavigne, she made time, and not just she made time, she was so happy to be a part of this. And that was also something I found important in the process. We don't explore that too much in the film, but I at one point I showed the band pieces of the interviews I did with their friends, with their idols like Offspring and Blink and like peers like Sum 41 and Good Charlotte. And I showed them, hey, here's what all these people think about you. And I think it was one of the first times they could really accept that like people care for them and love them and feel like they are a part of the same genre. They're part of the same culture. And so yeah, that was very cool to see that with the band. And like from a personal experience, I got to sit down in front of all these people that are so interesting, that have had very interesting lives. And like, for example, when I met with Mark McGrath, who was the singer from Sugar Ray, this his band was a huge success, but then it pretty much disappeared. Like there was no traction at all. So he did a lot of like soul searching and really evolved as a person. So it made for a very rich interview. And same with the singer from Jacoby from Papa Roach. Same thing. Like they've had, feels like they've had five lives in one, and so much to say, and feels like they thought about all the themes I wanted to explore in the film. So the the conversations were so fulfilling, and yeah, it was great. It was a great experience for me.
Well, the first thing about getting over the fact of shitting your pants, yeah, I can do that as well. Especially for people that you've grown up listening to and
Yeah,
admire their work, and it's just like, wow, this can be crazy and intense. But then also, you don't want them to smell the fear on you, so make sure you change the
exactly.
boxes. But then also, I find it's, I guess because they're not talking about their work, they're talking about somebody else. And as you mentioned, it's like very heartwarming. It's very, I can imagine them being a lot more relaxed. And then they're always going to be nice about people because they've come on for a reason. They're not going to just slam them and whatnot. But I do,
Except for Fat Mike, that the guy, the singer for No Effects, that's his whole like character. So that interview was so funny, man. Like he pretty much made fun of me and the band and punk and everything for an hour. It was so fun. Sorry, I cut you
it's
on
okay.
that.
It's all good. It's all good. With especially like Fat Mike, I did want to bring him up because he was just sort of so blunt and to the point about things. And it's like, as you said, probably got the basically you got roasted for an hour and got paid for it by Fat Mike. So you
Exactly.
can't go wrong with that. But then also, yeah, people are always going to be. I can. They're always going to. It's good, like a testament of people's character with how people talk and how sort of look back at what they've done and how they've done things. Especially like somebody like Mark Hoppus, for example, where they're like, we always feel like we're calling him up for a favor. And then they're just like, yeah, we love this guy, so I'll do it, no problem. Fat Mike, for example, yeah, kind of rinsed them, but then also I think you can see there's a respect for it because he's only going to talk to people like that if he respects them, right? So he wouldn't be horrible for no reason, and he respects them and how they've sort of probably done things. And especially when, like, I can imagine Warped Tour, it does feel like you're like at a college or university, so you're going to get hazed, and it's basically, can these people take the hazing? Can they and then rock out during the, whenever they need to play, and then have fun whenever they're off it? And I think as well, it adds layers to the documentary because it's not just you're not just talking to the bandmate members where you're kind of getting their story. You're kind of getting another side of the story as well because they can, for lack of a better term, they can kind of change their story a bit, but then it's actually somebody, another witness is there, so they can talk about it and be like, actually, yeah, they were nice, and then the other person can say, no, no, they were even better than nice. They were just incredible. Also, what I'm curious to know about is the documentary cuts between present day and the past, and I guess you probably felt quite lucky that there's so much footage from the past. Where do you start with sort of finding out what's relevant and what's not relevant and how you can use everything that's been captured?
Oh my God, that was so tough. We had at one point we had already started shooting. I think I was in Brazil with the band and we got an email. Hey guys, good news. We just found boxes, like shoe boxes filled with DV cassettes of like archives. We're like, how many? 700. So that means 700 extra hours of content, of tours and shenanigans and like honestly their whole career was documented, so we needed to go through all of it. I worked with a researcher. Her name is just Justine, and she went through all of it, and we had like spreadsheets with we had like our own way of kind of classifying all of this, and we had like a list of stuff we wanted to have, like, and she knew she had like the story of the film that I had written, like where we were going, the questions I was asking and the themes I wanted to talk about. So she would find images and put place them in bins to illustrate all these themes, and then I would go through like a first selection and then narrow it down, and then my editor would narrow it down again, and so that was kind of the process. And I still feel like we had some FOMO throughout the whole process of this because we're like, did we miss that like little spark, that connection? Did we miss anything? And so yeah, there was a lot of like we needed to let go at one point. Like we knew we couldn't show everything that happened in 25 years, of course. And so yeah, that was very difficult deciding what to cut out and what to keep. Initially, I had planned on the film being more like a little bit more of the images from 2024. But when we started editing, we figured like we felt such like a strong connection and like emotions with the archival footage that oftentimes we would end up replacing some of the footage that I shot in 2024 with archival footage, because that's when the genesis of the band, like that's when you create your identity as a band. And so that's why we spent so much time on that in the film, because we just fell in love with the archives, and we thought it was so interesting to see the guys as teenagers with a big dream. And yeah, so a lot of archives, a lot of hours going through them, and a lot of FOMO, honestly.
Yeah, again, it's funny. We had it's mentioning that you have one big spreadsheet for all these ideas and items, and then sort of the snapshots of how you're going to create it. I can imagine that as like a weird sort of how we're going to use this, but then also this is incredible that we've got this. Uh,
Exactly.
and there's probably stuff that you're thinking we could have probably used this, we could have used that, could have done this, could have done that. Yeah, what an absolute like sort of head scratch of like what to do. And I do love the sort of seeing them when they're younger, and you'll have that idea of like what they're like, what they were like as a band, how they were sort of progressing, and also you kind of get an idea of what they're like in the studio because I feel like as artists, as audience members, you don't really see how songs are created in a way, and the sort of the structure of them and how you see some of the like those sort of early stages of like, oh my gosh, that's I do anything, but they're not actually, but in their head they're not haven't cracked it yet, and they're sort of playing and like, oh my gosh, it's like even though you've made that song, you're still sort of on your edge of your seat, being like, you're so close to cracking it. You feel like you're watching it from the future in a way, and it's like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it's again, it was really cool to see. And they were saying about, I think the first album they took over a year to record or so, which I'm sure, like as a record label, they're probably ripping their hair out, thinking what's taking so long. But then,
Why did we sign these guys? They don't know what they're doing, kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. And in a way, you're just like, well, actually, this is sometimes this is how they're going to work and how they're going to do. I think what I would have loved to have seen is like because they talk about like their third album and not really being
Yeah,
something they're necessarily happy with. But I've listened to it recently and actually quite enjoyed it. And I was thinking maybe they're being a bit too harsh on themselves, but I would have loved to have seen a bit more on that sort of side because it reminds me a little bit of even Chris Cornell. He did an album with like Timberland, I think after his like his first foray into like solo stuff, and
yeah,
it kind of reminded me about that a little bit, where people were like we kind of need to get that Timberland sound, but without
right.
Timberland, without paying Timberland.
Well, that was my favorite album. That's the one I connected to the most. It was the darkest one. It was the one that felt in a way more mature, but also like the reason why I didn't connect with the fans as much is it was a departure from what they did before. So, but when it came out, I guess I was just like at the right age, and I really connected with that one. They worked with this producer named Danger, who was actually like a Timberland protege. And so yeah, so in some of the songs, and fun fact, there's in the song Generation on that album, the guy you hear at the beginning who says, "Listen," that's DJ Khaled.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, that's again. Like, I feel bad now for saying like trying to get Timberland without paying Timberland and then use this protege. It's like, oof, whoops, sorry, man. But again, like I do, they when they talk about the sort of their brotherhood nature of it, because obviously there's as artists they've spent so much time together. You can't even say they're friends. You can't even say they're brothers. They're kind of like the next one up, wherever that would be. How do you introduce yourself into their world because they're going to be so tight knit and
Yeah,
they'll have their sort of shorthand and how they're what they're doing and how they're sort of performing and trying to be natural, especially like with a camera on them. How do you go about
absolutely.
inserting yourself into their life without being too disruptive?
When I met them the first time, like the whole band, I was actually on tour with them in the UK. When I showed up, and these guys have cameras on them all the time. They have like a videographer on staff that captures everything. They're doing a lot of social media content. And so when I showed up, it was important for me that they didn't see me as just another camera, another thing on their schedule. So when I got there in the UK, I actually left my camera in the bag for as long as I could. So I just wanted to connect with the guys, meet with them, introduce myself, make sure that they that we build trust between one another, and we did. And at one point, Chuck said, "Okay, so are you gonna get your camera out of that bag and start filming the film?" And so I knew that was the right time. So from there, the second tour was in Brazil, and the guys, it's kind of like they had time to think about like the fact that we were making a documentary in between the tours, and they showed up on that tour and they were so opened and just like, you know, I was just there with them. I didn't want to like plan like activities and go, "Hey guys, we're gonna go skydive for the documentary." It was not that type of film. It was more like vérité. So I just they just gave me all access. So I just started documenting. I was a fly on the wall a lot, and yeah, and that's what's pure, I find, is just like when people are just themselves and there's a camera there and they interact with me as if there was no camera. And so that's why I feel like I was able to go a little deeper than even I expected from the get-go in this project.
It's a really nice process to hear and the way that you can introduce yourself and sort of make them at ease because I can imagine it's very daunting, especially doing a documentary. They're going to be as open as possible, and then you're going to just try not to, I don't know, I don't want to be like say disruptive on what they're doing, but you kind of don't want to let them lose their flow in. what their in their performances and how they're sort of going to go about things. Um,
Exactly. And like even it was to the point where when sometimes like they would argue about something and I was filming and no one ever said stop filming. It was just like they get it. They got it. Like they knew that the film would be rich in emotions and would cover everything. So yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do that.
yeah, especially with like you kind of want to curate your image as well because there is that side of things.
For
Um,
sure.
I just want to go back to the editing process, and then you were able to have access to both sort of past and the sort of present footage. Um, did you think about in your mind how you wanted to do like 50-50 between the two, or was it a case of we're just going to use whatever's best for the story and sort of insert it into what the band have been talking about?
Yeah, I had planned on using roughly like one third archives, one third interviews, and one third the live action stuff I shot in 2024. But when I got on the project, the film was like the way they had pitched the film to Prime, it was more of an archival film. But it was important for me that we showed who they were and how they evolved as people. And so, yeah, that's how I approached it. And I wrote the story with, themes and everything, all the subjects I wanted to talk about. And I structured it like a classic like 3-act film. And once we started editing, I didn't care if it was footage from 2024, if it was archives, if it was taken from a news outlet, as long as I could illustrate what we wanted to say. So yeah, I didn't really have an agenda in terms of, hey, we need to have that type of footage. So that's why it's a little heavier on the archival footage, as I said.
I again with like documentaries, there's probably so much change in shooting compared to like a
Yeah,
narrative because you've got a script. Whilst when you have all this footage and sort of probably things that will happen in real time where you think, oh, that's going to be really good for this area that I didn't really think of.
absolutely. What I really liked also in having access to all this archival footage and what I shot is I could make the footage like interact together. So I could have baby simple plan with a big dream and say, "Hey, I'm never going to stop until we are in a tour bus," and then cut to they're in a tour bus. So I had all the tools to tell a story where it was like, and also it it was so easy in a way to tell the story because from the beginning they knew what they wanted to do. Their plan was simple, honestly. It was we're gonna work so hard. We're never gonna stop until we reach our dream. And the dream was we want to tour the world. We want to be in a tour bus. That was it. And turns out they did a lot more than that. But I had access to all like they were so confident also when they were 20, 21, saying like, yeah, we're going to San Diego. We're gonna record Mark Hoppus because he's gonna be the guy who helps us, solidify our identity within the like the pop punk movement. So like they knew it's like they were Nostradamus. Yeah, so it was fun to cut from the archives to the footage from now.
I think as well, like there's kind of like a maybe a comedic element to it as well that you're kind of just like this is what we want to do. Then with a click of a finger, where you can, no time passes at all in whilst watching it, but really it's like 20 years had passed and they're beyond their sort of dream sort of thing. I just want to go back as well to the interview stage because you're inserting yourself into people's lives and you're making themselves comfortable whilst on tour. But when you're doing the one-on-one interviews with Simple Plan, and there are moments where it's quite heavy and it gets quite emotional, how do
Yeah.
you allow for them to sort of breathe and then get the interview back on track? Not necessarily back on track, should I say, move the interview along so that even though they have that emotional moment, they're also you don't lose them as a person, that they're sort of overthinking about what happened and dwelling too much, that they would, they would need I don't want to say breather, but as in, yeah, so you don't lose them as a interviewee.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, I think it comes down to the level of trust they had in me. You know, I had spent months with them on tour. I, we became friends, and so they know that I care. I care about them. I care about them as people. I care about their legacy. And so when I sat in front of them, there were no barriers. So, and I was also emotional. You know, like every time I sit down for an interview, I'm very straightforward. Like even when I met with like my idols, I told them like, "Hey man, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like I'm a guy who grew up listening to you and like I'm making my first documentary on Simple Plan. Like I can't like it's incredible. And I feel so privileged that I'm here in front of you, and that's kind of how I introduced myself in all these interviews. And so they saw me as like a vulnerable person, as a real guy, and not just like a journalist who wants the little clip of them. It was like, it was like a real conversation. And we also used the interrogotron. It's a device that projects my face in front of it's like a teleprompter that mirrors my face in front of the lens. So people are talking to me like they see my face, but they're actually looking straight into the camera. So that made for a strong connection also. You're looking like eye to eye. So yeah, like when I sat with the guys like in the band, they got emotional, all of them at a certain point, but it was all part of the conversation and it led to something else. And I had the script and the questions I wanted to go through, but was so flexible because it's a film about them. So and I'm trying to figure out like how is it being in Simple Plan and how was it evolving, becoming a man in Simple Plan. So I learned so much during these interviews with them. So no, they were trusting and they were okay with the fact that they were emotional because it's an emotional process digging deep into your 25-year career.
And also like in a way, the guys started off, I don't want to say like on a bad foot, but where they kicked out Chuck, for example, in their old band. And how do you bounce back from something like that, but then also work with someone again, because you kind of got burnt, but then it's really like, yeah, really what a like t sticky situation to be in, but then actually somehow you persevered and actually got through it all.
I didn't realize before starting this project how much it was important in their story. But then I figured it out. Their relationship is it's very unique. It's like family, but you also have a business together and you also have your identity intertwined with someone else, right? And so yeah, it's super complex, their relationship. And I was very happy that they were open and talking about it because in a way, like that's really what's going on behind the curtains. Like people didn't know that. Yeah, it's a fascinating and very insightful part of their whole story. Like, it can I think it can be translated into all kinds of relationships with people you care about and people who you share so much with. When you started when they were 13 years old. So of course, like back then, what do you care about? Music, like it's very limited. You're like connected through your hobbies and the stuff you like, but then you become men and you start seeing differences. You have kids, you have wives, and the way you go about in your life is different. You have different values, you have, all kinds of different things. But you're still connected in the same way that you were when you were a teenager because you're it's very tight quarters, It's like you're in a tour bus for months. You're eating together, you're sleeping together, you're performing together. So yeah, it's very, very complex. I never had like a relationship like that in my life. Like I have very strong like relationships and good friends from when I was a teenager. They're still my friends, but we're not together 4 months in a row every day, and we don't share our jobs. And so then when we meet each other, we're so happy to see each other because we have so many things to tell each other, like, hey, like how's work, how's life, how's everything. When you're with someone like that in the same band, all these things. So it's super complex. And still to this day, I'm not sure I understood the whole thing. It's it's so rich.
And on top of that, like as you mentioned, that you're basically on top of one another all the time, and it's like it could be very suffocating. But I think after so many years, you kind of make it work. But then understand, I bet you know how to wind someone up, but then also you know when to give them space and sort of just like, yeah, he just needs 5 minutes. Leave him be. Let him.
Yeah, and I can testify to that. Like in the archival footage, I could see like they didn't know how to communicate. They didn't know how to deal with their emotions, but now they do.
Yeah,
They know, yeah, and they know how to talk to one another. They know how far they can go and not go, and yeah,
yeah, exactly. And just like with any sort of close, tight-knit relationship, and it's weird to think that you work, your friends, your sort of everything's just all together.
absolutely.
Which
And
is
the film addresses the relationship between Pierre and Chuck a little more than the relationship between the other guys, but it's the same thing for everyone. All of them in the band have very like a very powerful relationship, and with all sorts of ups and downs through 25, 30 years, we decided to address the reset days and like the genesis of Chuck and Pierre's dynamic more because it felt very rich and it felt like that's how the band really really started. But all their stories as humans in Simple Planet, I found was very, very rich.
yeah, and I can again, you're sort of in that moment as well with them, and sort of and having the archive footage to see how much they've changed and matured as people
Yeah.
emotionally as well.
Yeah. Like Jeff matured so much. Like Jeff he's the guy with the wisdom. Like, but he was not before. He was the guy with the attitude and the guy who would snap. He was so because he's like a really emotional guy. And so when he was younger, he didn't know how to control the emotions. But now he did a lot of self-reflection and therapy, and he's like such a beautiful human being that sometimes will bring the guys together and be like, "Hey guys, here's what's going on. We should, you know, let's be grown-ups about whatever situation they're going through." So he has kind of that role in the band.
Again, it's probably an amazing thing to see as well, seeing someone sort of you basically see them grow up, not in real time, but like it and fast forward, especially if you
Exactly.
spend so much time with them. For my penultimate question, what was the hardest subject that you had to cut out from the doc?
Well, I kept every theme, every subject I wanted to talk about in the film, but there was only like as I said, like the band always felt like outsiders. They felt like imposters, and I made it my mission in a way to kind of validate them, validate their place, especially like to them really. So I had planned, and I did shoot an interview with the four of them together in the basement, and there was a TV in front of them, and I showed them what other people thought of them, and that was like it really felt like therapy. Honestly, it felt like a real therapy session, like a group therapy. But we decided to cut it out at the last minute, that whole bit, because it didn't come off as well. Yeah, it was exactly like I envisioned, but when we put it in the context of the film, it didn't work. It felt like we didn't get that this was an answer to the validation they never got growing up. It just felt like I was hyping them up too much in the film through the other people talking. So it felt like more like commercial in a way. But But the truth is, I think it really affected them like on a personal level when we did that. But it didn't come off like I thought in the edit, in the structure of the film, it didn't work anymore. So the only time we go back into the basement with the band is towards the end. With the last song, we bookend the film the same way. It starts in the basement, finishes in the basement. But yeah, that was too bad because I had the four of them together and the interview was great. It was insightful. We might release it one day, just like as a extended content, because I'm sure fans would love to see that. It was very cool to see them react to their heroes talking about them. So yeah, maybe one day we can release it.
Definitely, you know what, that'd be quite fun. And I guess as well, when you have that moment and you can have, it must have been slightly heartbreaking knowing that you've got a really good interview, but it's just like, oh man, it just does not work. You kind of unfortunately have to get rid of it, and it probably
Oh,
it's like getting, I don't know, it is like probably something quite special in a way, having them all there, especially with the setting and whatnot. And then it's just like, ah, man,
absolutely. And same as for everyone I met, like all the interviews took between 30 minutes to an hour. So much good stuff. So much good stuff. A lot of it stayed in the edit suite, unfortunately. It could have been a series.
that's what I was thinking. I actually thought at first it would be a series and have like 3 episodes sort of with the build up
Yeah.
before, but I guess it's also just how it sort of falls really and what Amazon might want. But I think we can start with like a petition, hashtag release the basement cut with the question with that interview. Um, and then just to wrap the episode up, what was your favorite part to work on the documentary?
Oh man, the what'll stay with me honestly is the raw emotions of the fans, honestly. When I interviewed them, met with them, just filmed them at the concerts, that was so powerful. And that's gonna stay with me for a long time, I think.
I think that's a nice way to wrap it up. It's not about the band, but it's about the fans and the people along the way.
That's why I called it the kids in the crowd, honestly. That's what really that's what really got me. It's in a way, it's of course it's still about the band. Like all that connection is because of the band, but it just lives on through the fans.
Yeah, 100%. Didier, thank you so much for your time today. Simple Plan, The Kids in the Crowd is streaming now on Amazon. Go out and watch everybody's hard work and yeah, enjoy it. Thank you again.
Robert, thank you very much.
Thank you. You take care
Yeah.
and bye bye.
You too. You too. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.